three exceptional leaders who have served as the executive mentor with ICO practice since many years, and each are bringing decades of top-tier executive role experiences at international and global perspective on leadership, transformation, and growth. I will start with Andreas. Welcome, Andreas. Andreas is a seasoned executive and board leader with a career spanning top role at Bayer, WIT, including as a president and member of the WIT Global Executive Board. He later served as chairman at Merz Pharma, advisory role in Europe and in US and in Asia. He also is a co-author of The Illusion of Invincibility, exploring leadership success and failure from the top, inspired by the Inca history. Welcome, Andreas.
Thank you.
Sibyl is an accomplished executive with a very strong track record in leading industrial and technology-driven organizations as an engineer. She served as a group executive board member at Schüner Group, at Textrais AG, and senior leadership role at Ritter AG. Her experience is span commercial growth, leadership transformation initiative, and global service operation, making her a powerful choice and voice for driving sustainable business and performance. Welcome, Sibyl.
Thank you.
Hugues de la Marnière brings 25 years of executive leadership across banking, finance, and industry. He has held the CEO and managing director role at major institutions like Société Générale, Commerzbank, operating across US, Europe, Asia, and specifically China. Knows the driving complex of transformation and strategic realignment. Hugues offers a seasoned view on navigating disruption and opportunity in dynamic market.
Absolutely.
Please join me in welcoming Andreas, Sibyl, and Hugues.
Hi, everybody.
Some extract from the research. We see specifically last year a record turnover were due to different reorg, different change of CEO, M&A, IPO, transformation of the external and internal factor, impact of the EI, the tariff aspect, that more than 40% of the leaders have experienced turnover of more than half of their leadership team on the last year. This one is a unprecedented number that we have experienced over the last decades. And this one is impacting not only the executive, their teams that they have inherited, but also the overall organization. What we see is that specifically on the first year on the role, can be as an external hire, can be as an internal promotion. More than 1/3 of the executive have real doubt on their personal ability to perform due to the permanent volatility and the very big challenge that are putting at the top of the house to navigate and to make the right choice with a high level of uncertainty. We see also that the team cohesion is a critical success factor to perform, specifically when you are heritage from a team already in place, and while combining and bringing new perspective, can be at the board level, can be at the executive committee level, or can be inside a different type of department or business unit in the different type of cultural context, business context, or client challenges. Against these key challenges, we have the privilege of having experiences of executive leader from different industry, different type of geography, different type of role, with the board perspective, executive committee's perspective, and leaders supporting top executive on this type of transition trajectory, and high level of volatility. I will stop sharing and I will start asking Andreas with you first maybe experiences, Andreas. Andreas, you are a current chairman and board director. You have a lot of experience on board in US, in Japan, in Germany, and at international level. From your personal experiences, what support, structure, or early intervention makes the biggest difference in helping new leaders to succeed? Andreas.
Yeah, I try to look from two perspectives out of my sort of executive roles in the past and out of my chairman role, and looking from the board. I think I try to make sure that we really have a structured onboarding, not just an administrative lift and appointments and a plan, structured in a sense that you have very early feedback and interaction with the executives you onboard as a board member or as a CEO, because they get so much information from left and right that is important that you find the left and right barriers. Is this on strategy? Is this personal intention? Are these personal messages? And what is my personal feedback? So I actively and proactively interact in between as a guide and pilot. And I did this in my CEO role, and I do this in my board role. And I could see onboarding, for example, in executive in a CEO role or executive in a CFO role, that they get very different messages from the organization. We all feel probably in our role that they shouldn't, but obviously during the onboarding they get strategic, operational, etc. And this cross-check is incredibly important. The other part, very often forgotten, that people enter completely different cultures. And I try, and we used to give new onboarded executives a budget for external sparring. Not necessarily coaching, but sparring. Sounds a bit strange, but it is so important to have people checking with them and not necessarily their superior if they feel insecure. I give you another example. We onboarded a scientist, a female scientist, and she comes from a very process and data-oriented world out of science, running a huge business unit. And she now has to deal with the crazy commercial people, the cowboys from sales and marketing, and different bunch of pack of people who were, for many of them, 50 to 70% of information is enough to make a decision, which is completely out of this world once you come from science or more detailed or R&D background. So to discuss with somebody else on personalities, on how to look at personality structures, how to approach personalities, how to speak from stage to personality is incredibly important. So this cross-checking and sparring at the same time is important, be it internally or externally.
And thank you, Andreas. And as a chairman, what is your style? You are open line to the executive committee, or you respect the process of every 6 weeks having the board meeting?
I do both. No, not necessarily. I think I have a completely open line. The CEO and the CFO in particular, they need to have this open line. I think it's incredibly important, and goes both ways. And a CEO coming to you and says, "I need you as a sparring and not as my boss," kind of formal boss. And the titles are at the door. I don't need the title. It's easy to say once you're the chairman. I don't need the title to have a good leadership style, but I try to act without the title, and I try to give people the opportunity to talk to me once they're insecure. And obviously, entering a new culture and a new role, you're not 100. I mean, the people who are over secure, and we probably come to that later, over-secure, you already have a risk. Yeah. And it's not being unsecure in the sense you don't know what you're doing. It's being, are my methodologies, which worked well in other places, are they the right methodologies in my new place? And this is why I'm not just active, but also proactive, double check with these during onboarding, what messages they're hearing, what they want to discuss, and what's on my mind. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andreas, sharing your practical experiences.
Especially when they get mixed messages, it's, do they digest their mixed messages on their own, or do they just check with whatever the chairman or other people in the board, what's my takeaway on these mixed messages? Because people get messages with intentions. Look is kind of, look who's telling the story and why.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Sibyl, you have done a lot of work in team alignment and leader development. When stepping into a new role, how can executives quickly assess and align with the existing team dynamics while still establishing their own leadership identity?
Yeah, I can maybe share an example of when I joined an industrial group as a division head and member of the executive board. So I think it's always important to understand the organization, so getting to know it. So that means you have talks with your direct reports, but also with other people in the organization. Let's say you observe, you really ask questions, don't assume, really ask the questions, because we are full of assumptions, but most of the time they are not entirely true or not at all. And for instance, I also went to visit my production plant, the local one, and actually I worked there for 2 days, hands-on, blue collar, to really understand the processes. And these things have a big impact in how you can understand the organization, the culture, how things work, but also you have the possibility then to really get to know a little bit of the, let's say, between the lines, what's happening there, which is not written anywhere on the paper. And the thing is that if you do that, you already get across your leadership identity, because you walk the talk, you behave with integrity, and you establish trust in a very fast pace, because people will realize that you're truly interested in how things work, in whatever the product or offering is of the company, and in them. Yeah. And so basically you listen, you ask questions. Of course, you also adapt to some extent to that culture and the way things are. And then certain decisions you have to take fast, but with the trust creation, people will usually accept it. And of course, you communicate well, so people can understand the moves you make, and you try to get people on board early on. So I think if you role model and behave with integrity while listening and adapting to some extent, then midterm you can make quite a few moves into direction and where people will follow you. It has always worked out for me that way, I can say.
Thank you, Sibyl, for sharing. Now back to Hugues. As we have discussed about listening and understanding the team dynamic and cultural diversity. Now we know that everybody is a very high expectation to produce results from the stakeholder, from the client, from the different type of part of the ecosystem. And you personally had a lot of experiences with transformation. What specifically on the volatile business landscape and having the rule and regulation changing, how this one should be for a new executive to put priority, to be confident in decision, and specifically on the first 90 days or 180 days if we consider the 6-month journey specifically in China.
Thanks, Christophe. In China, yes, it was effectively quite a volatile and uncertain environment, that's for sure. It was prior to COVID, just, COVID came a little bit after. But to answer to your question, yes, I would say that one of the key points for me was to anticipate before I was in charge officially, and make sure that first of all I had the full backing of the board, and I had a presentation at the board level, plus, of course, a validation of the strategy I was proposing, which was obviously confidential at the time. So the fact that you have this, this backing from top was absolutely key. Then I spent a lot of time in looking at the files, whatever kind of information I could grab in order to understand what I was ready to face in a few weeks or months. Looking at the individual files of the individual, exchanging with HR department, and obviously looking at the figures, the different type of businesses, the list of customers, I mean, every kind of information, so that you don't waste time during your 90 days. On the first day, you are already pre-informed. What you lack, of course, is the cultural gap. And in my eyes, it's important to spend a bit of time to understand the major points. I can remember in the case of China, I spent some time with a competitor. She was head of Citibank in China, and prior to go there, I asked her what is the thing I need to know when I face a Chinese customer for the first time. And she gave me an answer which helped me actually during those 5 years in China, which is that in negotiation with the Chinese culture, they will push as long as there is no resistance. As soon as there is a resistance, then you can start to bring your arguments and try to have a more balanced negotiation power, which obviously is something I used, and it went extremely well in all the negotiation I had, whether it was with customers, but it was also the case with sometimes with employees. So I would say that once you are in charge, when you arrive, so even if you don't spend too much time in the cultural gap, because people expect you to have a difference in culture, and sometimes you can use this difference to excuse yourself on a couple of things that you want to push for faster, which would not be accepted if you are from the culture where you're landing. You should not spend too much time about the past, the syndrome of why should we do things differently because we have always done it this way. So you don't want to spend too much time on that. You just spend time in communication quite widely on and with a lot of transparency on what you want to achieve, what is the strategy, and clearly in the first 90 days, everybody will understand well whether they believe that there is a fit for my job or not, which helps, of course, pretty much send the following discussions that you might have in order for promotion or to ask people to find another job. So it's being very transparent in the strategy, very transparent in the changes you want to achieve, giving a bit of a sense of urgency as well. I think are key points for you to make sure that you are really saving time in the following execution of the strategy. And of course, one thing that is quite important during this period, this first 90 days, is to adapt and adjust all the time, because you can be as prepared as you want. When you arrive in a new country, you don't know who you will face. You will have to adapt all the time. You need to listen, not spend too much time with people. You need to make sure as well that people understand that you're present. I was myself what I call a walking manager, meaning I was in the morning and in the evening, crossing around all offices where I was, whether it was in one of the 7 areas where we're present in China, and that makes also a big difference. So the fact that you have to adjust all the time is also true, and the communication you should have is not only with the employees, obviously, but as well with all the different stakeholders, including, in the case of our financial industry, regulators.
Okay, interesting. The regulator aspect also, like in the pharma business.
Yes.
Andreas, we see on the research that more than 1/3 of new leaders don't feel confident in their ability to perform. We see also that 75% of the leaders are seeking for this external support. What do you see as the biggest blind spot for new executives often bring into a high-stake role, and how can they overcome this one quickly, Andreas?
Yeah, and we talked about this, the example of external support and sparring early of where you're secure, insecure is important. That, straight to your question, I think number one, underestimating the informal culture. So decoding the unwritten rules. Yeah, I give you an example that we had somebody, a very senior executive, who came from a more startup culture environment, very straightforward, very direct, short timelines, decisions immediately without evaluating, and highly professional, but he got sort of most of the decisions. He came from a culture where, unless you're in drug safety or quality, and particularly in marketing and sales, and if you're professional, you can take most of the decisions if you have 40 to 70% of the knowledge you need. And this was a culture which was much more science-based, where people tend to tried to have 80 to 90% of the information. So there was a culture clash, and this was not written anywhere. He just didn't decode it. Overestimating their past authority, because most successful candidates come in strong, and they believe that they have a past authority, but they underestimate that you have to re-earn it in a new system, and misjudging internal dynamics and assuming alignment. And I give you my own example. When I came in as a vice chairman at Merz, I kind of felt, and the chairman was still from the family. I took his place later on due to unfortunate health issues, but which was not the plan for quite some time. But at the beginning, I felt I was in the board, I was talking to the chairman, it was a family-owned company. I didn't decode that this was not, I said, well, why don't we take the decision? But the decision was, the true decision-making table was the breakfast table of the family. Yeah. Where in the morning they came together, the sort of key family members came together and they rediscussed it, and then sometimes with uncertain outcome and sometimes surprising outcome even for me. So you need until I found out, and obviously we talked about it, and once a week I was invited to the family breakfast table. So then I can explain to the other family members without official roles, what my position is. Why do we need to change course and change things? So and very often forgotten by and not liked by senior executives is the contact with the Works Council and unions. This is a sensitive topic. Most people say, "Wow, the terrible unions," but their work is much harder than ours, yeah, because they work under basic democratic environment. They're elected while we are not elected, and to see their world, to listen to them early, yeah, without trying to make friendship or to make connection, but it is just respect. It is respect. Very often not done, never done, and I used to do this a lot, to talk to the Works Council formally and informally, to have as a new CEO, to have once a week coffee and cake with the head of the union, where he was telling me his plan and I was sharing his plan, and it meant we always maintained confidentiality. But the worst thing for them is surprises. Yeah. And that's the worst for any Works Council and union member, but people approaching them and telling them, "Hey, have you heard?" So they can, for you, say, "Yeah, sure, I know, but this, take this is important, or this is not important, or this is just a rumor." But these are huge ally, even if they're not your friend, and they will never be. But these are huge ally in the professional sense, and totally underestimated. So strong recommendation from my side.
So thank you, Andreas. It means decoding the code, unlearn to relearn, and managing all the stakeholders in the new role, including the social partner. Sibyl, you worked closely with different type of leadership team. as an executive woman in the engineering and manufacturing business. And what has been what you can share the most effective strategy for new leaders to build credibility fast, especially when they are inheriting of a complex or underperforming situation / team?
Yeah, thank you, Christoph. I think what comes very naturally to me, and I think it's a key element, is that you meet everybody at eye level, right? So goes a bit into what I already said, right? You listen, you ask questions, people feel recognized, people feel really taken seriously, no matter what the hierarchy, the function, or the background. I think it's a very strong tool. And meeting people at eye level also means that you behave in a fair manner. Another thing is behaving with integrity, so walk the talk. Let's say, in a nutshell, right, give people a reason to follow you naturally, not based on your, let's say, hierarchical authority or decision-making power, but based on legitimacy. And I'll make an example. At Rieter, I took over the repair service. It was an organization of some 110 people spread across 22 countries, very intercultural environment. Some of them were agencies, most of them actually in some subsidiaries. And I took it over from a rather micromanaged culture. And my mission was to double the revenue there. And I should probably also mention that 2 weeks after I took over, there was the lockdown. So up until this day, most of these 110 people I have never seen face to face in my whole life. But we made it. And how did we do that? So first of all, I had conversations with everybody. So again, people see that you are interested and you listen and you do something meaningful with it. So I asked, for instance, what motivates you? What could be the next step, especially the direct leaders? And maybe an episode there, anecdote. So one of the leaders, I asked him, well, what's your plan? I mean, what would you want to do in a couple of years? And he said, pardon me. And I said, well, yeah, where do you want to go? And he said, well, I didn't know I had options. So I showed him some options, but I said, of course, you have to do it yourself. I don't know what's going to be your next step, but you have options, but you have to make it happen. That really motivates people. And then if you agree on something, you take them up on it. So you show that the contribution is really important. So that's also an aspect of integrity. And another great tool, I think, to establish credibility is try to solve at least one problem that the organization has in the first 90 days. So a problem that keeps people from doing a good job. Usually it can be something about maybe processes that don't work and they are an obstacle to people, or things that have not been decided for a long time and people got stuck based on it. For instance, at another company, I initiated the resolution of a huge quality issue that cost us 50,000 francs a month and a high loss on reputation with key customers in the automotive sector. And people were obviously not able to resolve it themselves. So I initiated the resolution of it. I didn't solve the problem myself, of course, but they saw, okay, Sibyl helps us, supports us, that we can work properly. So I think these are all strong tools of establishing trust, good communication, of course, clear communication, also on expectations on how we want to work together. What's the strategy? How do we implement it? But basically, if people have a compelling reason to follow you naturally and to get up in the morning and give their best, then I think you have achieved what you need to.
Thank you, Sibyl. Back to you, Hugues. You had a different type of top executive role in different type of geography and industry. And which type of, I will say, advice you will give to executives that are trying to balance rapid execution while building a trust among skeptical teams that also have change fatigue teams? And here, how do you see the value of external sparring partner on this type of challenging time?
Thanks, Christoph. Actually, yes, your last point, the last part of your question is exactly what I was about to mention. It's always very difficult to do that alone, and this loneliness feeling that many managers have are sometimes an obstacle to really precisely get what is expected from you, which is rapid execution and a safe execution. And the risk of failure, as you mentioned, Christophe, with your stats, is a good reflection of precisely the risk many companies are taking by putting some people who are probably do not have the right mindset or the right experience in order to achieve it. So sometimes it's a risk. So, but basically, to answer to the rest of your question, I would say that leading by example is definitively one of the key points where you can gain the trust and then have people in a mindset where they would run the extra mile. I can give you an example of, for example, when I arrived in China again, one of the key challenge was to restructure the retail banking. Retail banking was a big problem because there was not much you can do. First of all, the regulator would be extremely tough and vigilant in the way you work this out. Plus, there is a practical issue, which is the fact that sometimes you have assets that are over 30, 40 years, and you just cannot close those loans easily. So I had to find a buyer for the portfolio of those assets. And the fact that I managed to find somebody and that the process of buying these assets out went through was basically a strong impact on everybody. Looked at me as somebody who can make things change differently from what they had before. They see concrete results, and this is also what is quite key, where people are a bit skeptical or tired of having listened to too many words and not seen enough actions. And the fact that the boss is taking a strong part in one particular challenge, I think is probably the best. But there is another aspect I would like to mention, which is linked to the human aspect of things. When I arrived in China, for some reason, the best people I could find for the key roles were majority of women, more than men, which was a bit strange and not quite similar in all countries. But I was quite lucky to balance the stat for the other centers, because in China it was quite good. But with that, I had to listen to the issues they were facing. Obviously, many of them were women with children, mothers, and they had issues. So I can give you some elements. One of them is the fact that I worked quite a lot with them on that, but we decided to have one work from home day per week. I think it was 1 year before COVID started. And I also spent a bit of time to look at the financials in order to improve the medical coverage that they had, in order to make sure that they would feel more comfortable at work. So the fact that you listen to the staff, you understand what are the key issues, key problems, in order to make them confident that you understand the issues and you are acting on those issues, has a fantastic impact then on the trust and on the drive you can get then afterwards from the staff. So I think, and I can give you examples on other countries, of course, but I think this example in China was particularly interesting for me.
No, thank you. Maybe one question, Andreas. You write a book on the illusion of invincibility. How you can reconnect, this what you discover from the Inca history in the how to have success and failure as an executive leader, or specifically when you are starting a new role?
Yeah, I think to to surround yourself with people, you need to find a way to surround yourself with people who speak freely. And within the environment you are, in your professional environment and outside your professional environment. But very often, you know, it's not difficult to encourage people and share with people what your challenges are. And we try to be, you know, we feel we are successful people. We feel there is a danger of feeling invincible, even if you know, if you get the people who are more the expressive types, who are driven by applause and recognition. And this is just a description, it's not a criticism. Particularly for them, it's particularly dangerous to feel that, hey, you're on the right, I'm on the right track, I'm doing the right things. But somebody who opens the door and tells you, hey, you know, this can I give you a different perspective on your actions? And to give you an example, my HR head, one of my best HR heads I ever had, he said, you know, if you don't like the situation in the sense of people didn't perform the way they should have performed, and you have the conversation on mixed average or poorer performance, the room goes 5 degrees centigrade, the temperature goes down by 5 to 10 degrees centigrade. I said, no, I'm a nice guy, they cannot be. He said, yes. And he gave me one of the best advices I ever got. He says, Andreas, why don't you consider what you want people to think when they leave your room, when they leave the room, after the conversation, after this difficult conversation, about their performance, about the projections, about low performance, etc. And that changed. That's a completely different mindset, because obviously I didn't want to destroy people, etc. But what do you want people to think? Do you want to think, hey, this was tough but fair, and I'm going to show him that I can do better? That's what we want. Yeah. And that changed my whole trajectory and bridge building towards the future. And very often you don't have to say much. If you can just say, if you can do this again, what would you do? And then people normally, they come with the answers. They know what they could have done better. And that's just one simple example. And it's just because you come in new, it doesn't mean that you have the success formula. Most normal people in an organization, they just they can be inspired, and you know, they all carry excitement and energy. They might not take it to the company, they might take it somewhere else, and to capture that excitement, passion into the company, that's what it takes. And this is why it's important, so important to find out where their passion is and where people's passions are. And this is why, you know, Sibylle gave an example of that you should spend time on the shop floor. And I have a, you know, if I would have tried to spend more time probably early in my onboarding to just sit in the car with reps, with successful reps, and going to customers, not to the customers which tell me, hey, your company is the greatest, congratulations for joining them, to go to their high potential customers which don't buy from us. And if you go with good reps in their car, whatever their briefing is, after an hour or two, I knew what was wrong and what could have been done. And you find out, people start talking to you, and the customers tell you. And the topics, I see very slow number of top executives who have spent time in the customer service department and just listening to what customers tell the customer service department on the phone. Yeah, how long their waiting time has been, what the issues are. And I had a mentee at Telecom in one of my roles, and I said, why don't you spend a day in the customer service department of the Deutsche Telekom? And I can tell you, she was cured afterwards. What is really on the minds of the customers and of their people.
Yeah, to feel the win of the client is the best school and best university. Thank you very much, Andreas, Sibylle, and Hugues. We are finalizing the webinar, and after we have spent time for Q&A. If I'm asking you 3 words, each of you, 3 words, not sentences, 3 words, what will be the key 3 words as advice that you want to give this one as a takeaway to the audience? Sibylle, 3 words. You're in mute.
Integrity, listen, integrity.
Hugues?
I would say courage, transparency, and the other one is paranoia.
Good. Andreas?
Listen more, act later.
Good. Thank you very much for your contribution. Annabelle, I have seen that we have many questions from the audience. You want to share, maybe to take some of them, Annabelle?
Questions you want to either put into chat or use the question and answer function. It's open. And we're here ready for your questions.
You can put the question in the chat and the audience or ask directly, feel free. Maybe one question to you, Hugues. What has been your biggest mistake as onboarding the new role in the CEO? We were discussing one when you were at Commerzbank, Hugues, to avoid. You know, what has been the way to reflect and also to reflect with the rest of the team or in your experiences? Hugues, you are in mute.
Sorry. Yes. It was in. I was based in London, and my previous experience, professional experience, was mostly in the US and in the UK. And I had to address the staff on global markets and in Frankfurt. So I put everybody in the very large trading room there, and I made a speech, and I started to explain to them, okay, you know, the market will close at 5 o'clock, so we need to meet, if you agree, you and you, at 6 o'clock. And I saw them, you know, moving around and chatting, and said, well, what's the issue? And they told me, well, we cannot, because our contract says that we finish at 6 o'clock, so we cannot have a meeting at 6 o'clock. It's not possible. And of course, you know, when you're on stage in front of 300 people, you know, you're not prepared for this sort of thing. And quite often as well, I have to say, when I arrived in Germany and I asked to do some very specific tasks, completely unprepared, not having enough information, I realized after a week that what I was asking the employee to do was stupid. And I went to him and I said, well, you know, why did you do it? And he told me, because you're the boss and you asked me to do it. I said, well, but it was stupid, right? Absolutely, but you're the boss. And you know, I realized that, you know, in the culture in Germany, you don't discuss what the boss tells you, you just do it. At least it's a bit cliche, but it was at least my experience, and I had to learn from it and to be extremely careful for any instructions I was giving to the employees.
Thank you, Hugues.
Questions. Sheet has asked, you sound like great leaders. What are the good ways to impact our own leadership team towards being the good and impactful leader, i.e., where people don't leave the company?
Andreas?
Yeah, impacting your own leadership team is apart from, you know, being a good leader and everything else we could talk about, is to learn together, to spend time together, you know, learning and developing together, because people have their own developing plan. But I have excellent experience going with them together to INSEAD for a session where we inspire together. Because if one goes to wherever, INSEAD or Harvard or to one of these great LHH sessions, it comes back with their own perspectives, singularity, and to learn together, to get inspired together by people from different industries, from different areas, be it from academia, that has and has had strong impact within my world.
A question from the audience. What has been the biggest help, Sibyl, on onboarding successfully in the new role?
The biggest, did I get it right? So what has been the biggest help in onboarding successfully?
In the new role, yes, in new roles. Yourself, or maybe top executives that you have been yourself supported as a mentor?
Actually, frankly speaking, I would have loved to get a bit more mentoring inside. It wasn't the case in my case. So I worked with some external professionals, so that's helpful. And of course, what's also helping is if you have a plan, and I think my colleagues here touched a little bit upon it throughout the webinar, right? So in order to not lose time, make your plan. How can you get to understand the organization fast? What could be your first moves? And once you have assessed or made a first assessment of the situation that you have met, because very often it's quite different from what you signed 8 months before you started. So once you have done your first assessment, realign your plan with the reality, reprioritize, and then move on. So having the plan, but still stay flexible. And if you don't get good support internally, of course, you can always challenge the boss if there is a boss, or demand certain things. But if you don't get what you need, just take an external professional, and that will be helpful because you need a sparring partner. I would agree with Andreas there.
Annabelle, any question? I don't see on the chat.
That you've answered?
We have one coming. I will open.
There's 3. In your experience, how do you deal when the financial results are behind on target while still motivating the organization for the future?
Hugues?
To be honest, when the financial results are behind target, it's precisely where you need to make sure that you have a convincing message in delivering a strategy that will precisely turn around the financials. And there is nothing more important than that. In the case, unfortunately, I cannot really think of any of my experience where I had really bad financials. Whether it was in UK, Germany, in Switzerland, it was really, really good. But I would say it's not really when things are looking bad that it's difficult to turn around, to convince people to be motivated and turn around things. You just need to put them in a mood where they like the challenge of making it happen. In my experience, it's more difficult to, when the numbers are good, to make them dream that it can be a lot better. And sometimes it's where I found the difficulty of making people dream much more than what is happening. In the case of, in my most recent experience in China, it was relatively easy because the numbers were not looking good at all when I arrived, and they have not for many years. So to improve, to make it better was a no. I would say it was not a real challenge, and people were extremely motivated by the messages that were just focused on making numbers better.
One question to you, Andreas. We see that 1/3 of the leader are not feeling confident on the new role. 56% are reporting feeling burnout, and 75% are seeking for external support, but they don't have the courage or the capability or willingness to ask for support. Why is this one behind? And we see a very different input, if it's US, UK, France, Germany, Switzerland, or Japan, with a high level of, specifically in Germany and France, not to ask for support, when in the Anglo-Saxon world is more a part of the natural way to become from good to great. Andreas?
Yeah, it's perceived as a weakness. The answer is that it's perceived as a weakness that I need as a senior executive or middle management upwards executive, that I need support and external help, which I can't get internally, and that I'm not capable of managing my role in the way it is expected. And that shows that how important, you know, on our side, the leadership is to stay close to the people we have, to you know, to feel burnout syndromes, etc. And again, if somebody has a 12-hour, 14-hour or more back-to-back calendar and more things to do than he can handle, that has two symptoms. Either it's too much coming to this person, and or the team below is not good enough to take over part of these activities. And I can tell you, when I teach leadership here on an academy where most of Eurostoxx companies are sending their top executives, mainly females in that case, you know, if you already have 12 or 14 hours full back-to-back day at 1 or 2 levels below the executive team, how can you move on to the next level? It's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible, because how can you handle that next or even the last level of that role if you get 200 emails a day, if you have 96 countries, if you have your calendar could be filled just with meetings or traveling or crisis management, and you might even have shareholders who also want answers. So you need a way to manage this, and you can only handle, and stakeholder management on top. You only can handle this if you have 1/3 of your calendar free, which sounds crazy probably to some people here in this audience, but you need this time not to have free time, but to need the time for stakeholder management, for crisis, for educating yourself and spending time with your team. And that's a mind, and that only works if the team if you zero compromise on people decisions. Zero. There are only 2 reasons to compromise. One is for social reasons. Yeah, somebody might be sick, have a sick family member, might be sick themselves, whatever, temporarily, or for developing somebody. That's because somebody new in a role or put in a new role cannot fulfill the whole role at the beginning. So they need our support and external support. Other than that, there's no reason to compromise. Because there's only one person who pays the price, and that's yourself if you compromise too much. And this is one of the top reasons for burnout and challenging. And that can be overcome through, once you start talking, not maybe it's coaching, sometimes it's beyond coaching, it's sparring, where people get really are confronted with their way of leading an organization.
One question, thank you, Andreas. One question is, how long does it take to really understand the organization enough to make organization change?
I can volunteer, or
Yeah.
is it to Andreas? Sorry.
Go ahead, Sibylle. No.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think it's important to distinguish a bit between different situations. Let's say if you have a turnaround case, you usually have to make decisions pretty fast, and then you forget a bit about the strategy and you work on structure, because you may have a cash problem. And first you need to make sure that the company can survive. So you don't have time to wait for half a year to make those decisions. And usually if there's a turnaround case, you need to change, let's say, a relevant critical amount of people in the organization, let's say reallocate roles, but sometimes also, let some people go to make that change fast. If it's not a turnaround situation, of course, it always depends also on the person. Some people can assess the situation pretty precisely within 3 days. Others haven't understood it within 2 years. So I think it depends. But let's say if you would like to make an informed decision, and a decision that also people would stand behind it, normally it doesn't happen after a month, because people will usually not buy into it. So even if your analysis has been precise, and 6 months later it may come to the same conclusion, and you may make the changes that you already thought you would after the first month, still makes sense to wait a little bit. But I would like to point out one thing. Very often you meet toxic people in the organization, and I'm not saying that there's people who are generically toxic, but people can be toxic, and it's usually highly underestimated what this toxicity does within a short time to the environment. So the toxic elements, you need to make them you need to remove the damage. So either you can turn those people or have those people turned into non-toxic elements, or you need to remove them immediately. That's my 50 cents.
Yes,
So
regarding the
this
yeah, thank
decision
you.
needs to be taken fast, because you cannot work with that. Yeah, because the collateral damage is too much. And they work either intentionally against the organization or your targets, or unintentionally. But you need to reduce the damage there immediately. Take it away.
Is one question regarding the culture. Maybe you can come back on this one, Andreas from Birgit. What has been the successful way to transform a culture into an environment that generates success? And what is a good culture in your opinion? And can be also with this toxic and yeah, Andreas, maybe you can build on this one and answering also on the remark of Sibyl.
Yeah, I mean the culture. You made a good comment about cross-cultural, comments, and what is a good culture is defined so differently across the globe. Yeah, obviously we have basic rules of engagement. We want passion, and we want results orientated, and purpose, and many other things. But I've seen so many executives on stage saying, hey, we want to grow by 12% and our profit by 14, and they believe that the whatever 500,000 or 20,000 people in the audience would love it. They just hear, okay, we need to work harder for the same money, and productivity needs to increase. What does that mean for us? Yeah, will there be a reduction in force, etc., etc.? So, you need to fill this. Most executives are not superstars in storytelling, but people just want to feel that they're on the right ship, even in a crisis. And I think Sibylle gave a great example. Within a tornado, on if you're on a ship on the ocean and the winds are at 11, you cannot say, let's have a round table and let's see how we get out of this. Yeah, and it might be difficult. You need to have a clear, you need to be the captain, yeah, and tell, or the pilot, and just say, this is the way we are going, even if you don't have much time. But building a culture is a long process, and in European culture, and you also gave a good example on, we tend to, especially German companies, tend to rely very much on loyalty and forget quality. Quality versus loyalty. That's a conflict. And if it isn't a match, you have an issue, and you have to go very early on criticism, yes, cynicism, no. And cynicism is toxic. Yeah, I 100% agree with Sibylle. You need to show using a soccer analogy, yellow card or the red card very soon, and stop it immediately. Yeah. And then people see how you act and how your values are, and share your values early. And what also helps you, if you write down your own values and the company values, do they match? Yeah, the current ones and the ones you want to achieve. But the current ones, do they match? And if they don't match, where the issues are, and how much you either need to compromise, or how much you need to work on the culture and the DNA.
The storytelling is a critical part of the executive leader to get the passion and motivation to be part of the boat and to make the transformation. Everybody has maybe a right place, at least with the right skills. But remember when I was, okay, who is out of the bus, in on the bus, and maybe sitting on the right seat. But this one is at least to make the call, we stay on the bus, and what is the right seat for each of the employee. I will close. We have still a lot of participants. That is good news. What I have seen with many executives that we are supporting is also to understand the business context and the cycle of the company. The culture of company ABC is different than different one, but also the life cycle of company. And sometimes you are in the startup mindset, and to start up, to scale up. In some case, you are in a turnaround time, and can be a division was very successful, and after need to go in a turnaround, and you need different type of leader, and the onboarding on this context is a different one. A third one will be accelerating the growth. One with external growth can be combined with M&A or acquisition of a key parameter, and having this one in place is critical. Can be also realignment of the priority with improving in a steady way, step by step, the current model, and to realign based on the change of the industry. And the number one will be to continue to sustain success on a very successful company. This means having this, being aware also on the onboarding, not only on the generic cultural context, country cultural context, but in which type of life cycle also the company or the division that you are stepping out is on the way, and having this partner sounding board part of this ICO community as well as internal mentor inside the group. This one is a very powerful combination. I will propose to close our webinar today. Thank you very much for your time, specifically the participants, Sibyl, Andreas, and Hugues. You will get the report based on the fact that you have registered, and please free to ask the ICO LHH team if you have any specific question, remark, idea, insight. This one is the way we work, and your input will be more than welcome. A big thank you to everybody. I wish you a nice rest of the day and a very nice week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christophe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Great. Oh, it's gone. There you are. It's us again.
Like we began. Thank you. Take care, Andreas. Thank you so much.
I'm glad at least one participant liked my storytelling thing.
Your storytelling is strong. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording now and make sure that gets through to Dylan. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You finish.